Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Apples and Genos Fantasy Hockey Podcast. My name is Nate Gert Nibelink. I'm the creator of Apples and Genos and originator of the Zero G draft strategy. In this podcast, I'm going to go over the most puzzling players league-wide as submitted by the Apples and Genos Discord server. Let's get it. Hello, everybody. Welcome on in. Glad to be back and doing another Puzzling Players live show for everybody here. It's been a couple weeks. We had some odd Mondays. We had Christmas and then we had New Year's, and it just didn't work out that way. But we're back and we are loving life. We had some big news in the NHL today. That's a good place to start, I guess. Obviously, we had the William Nylander signing. Fully official now, 8 years, $11.5 million per. He had a $69 million signing bonus as part of that total package. $69 million of the total is in signing bonuses, so that's very nice. Good job, Willie. I guess this really just gives you some confidence that he's not going to be distracted, I guess, the rest of the way by contract talks. I really never thought that he was the kind of player who would be, to be quite honest with you. Really seems like everything, despite everything that the Toronto media has tried to throw at this guy and how much they've criticized him at different points and how much the fans even have criticized him at different points, it really just seems to roll off his back, and he seems to just truly enjoy playing in Toronto. So good to see that, and yeah, it feels like wheels up for Willie Nye the rest of the way. Did want to notice also Arturi Lehkonen on the ice, not in a non-contact jersey, so that's a good sign. Not ready to play yet was the report, but obviously good for him to be getting in basically full practice at this point. Sam Bennett, we mentioned yesterday. There was an update today. Paul Maurice said he's fine. They'll check on him again tomorrow before officially confirming he's good to go. Bennett said he feels good, so that's good. It sounds like Jesper Wallstedt might play one of these games against Dallas, actually. I haven't actually checked to see who the starter is for Minnesota tonight. I believe Fleury was confirmed. Somebody can fact check me on that in the chat here. But I think Wallstedt might actually get in against Dallas. I guess in the media scrum, he reminded the media that he played 2 quality games in Dallas the past 2 preseasons against largely the Stars' real lineup. And they play in Dallas on Wednesday. So could be seeing Jesper Wallstedt sooner rather than later. And then we had a big trade, actually. So Philadelphia acquired Jamie Drysdale, who Blake and I just talked about in yesterday's show, and a second-round selection in the 2025 NHL draft from the Anaheim Ducks in exchange for forward prospect Cutter Gauthier, who you may, if you've been following the World Juniors, you probably know that name from being a pretty significant factor for the Americans and their gold medal squad there. Apparently there was some drama around this, like the Flyers were trying to meet with Gauthier and he was kind of ghosting them, and it sounded like he didn't really want to play in Philly, and so I guess they said, all right, then we'll send you to Anaheim, hope you want to play for them. So that's interesting. I guess, like, from Anaheim's perspective, they've seen what Pavel Mintyukov can do this year, and they're obviously pretty excited about that. They still have Olin Zellweger coming up, and he's expected to be perhaps even better offensively than Mintyukov. And so they really felt like Drysdale was a bit of a luxury, and so they thought that Gauthier could maybe add something to their forward group, maybe sooner rather than later even. It's an interesting deal, to say the least. I think on the Flyers side, like, the only reason you go out and acquire Jamie Drysdale is for him to be that power play guy. Obviously, Tortorella has really rotated through Cam York and Travis Sanheim and now Igor Zamula. I actually think Zamula's got an assist on the power play in the game today. But I think that the only reason that the Flyers would go out and make this move is to have Jamie Drysdale kind of lock down that top power play unit. I mean, Torts is still going to Torts, so who knows where that goes. But I do think that more likely than not, Jamie Drysdale is going to see a fair amount of minutes, and he's going to be the top power play guy in Philadelphia, at least for the rest of this season, and at least as long as the current regime is in power there. So definitely interesting stuff in the NHL today. Mondays are always pretty good news days in the NHL, so that's pretty fun. We got lots of comments already. Let's start it off. We got Michael Dove in the chat. This one was actually from a long time ago, 3:02 a.m. I had this queued up, ready to go live, and Michael was all about this and getting his comment right in at the top. Brandon Montour, capable of better numbers or one-year wonder last season? He's absolutely capable of better numbers. This is somebody I've talked about a bunch of times, and yeah, like shot attempts still way up there. Blake and I talked about Montour in yesterday's show as well. I have no qualms about saying that Montour is definitely going to get back to, what was the pace last year? Over 70-point pace last year. Maybe he doesn't get quite back to that height, but you're seeing Florida really come on now, kind of across the board. Tkachuk's finally scoring points. For Hagee's playing at the best pace he's ever played. Barkov even is playing at pretty much the best he's ever played. Reinhardt's playing the best he's ever played. Really good stuff kind of across the board for all of Florida's stars. I think that just means that Montour's luck has got to change here. He's doing all the right things. He's shooting the puck. He's just not getting it on net, which is kind of odd. The shots per 60 is not as high rank-wise, I guess, as the individual shot attempts per 60, which is kind of odd, but I feel like that has to normalize at some point. Montour obviously coming back off a pretty significant surgery. It's comforting that like the stats are there. I think of last year Austin Matthews, he had all the underlying numbers, but he wasn't able to convert, and there was underlying wrist issues that were going on there. I wonder if there's maybe something a little bit similar here with Montour, where it's just not feeling quite right coming back after that shoulder injury. That's speculation, but maybe that explains a little bit of what's happened so far. But I would expect that unless things are deteriorating and going the other way, which we don't have evidence of in the underlying numbers, that at some point these shots start to hit the net and these shots start to go in, and Montour starts to factor into a lot more points for the Panthers moving forward. So definitely still consider Brandon Montour to be a big time buy low. Johnny Jackson in here. What are your thoughts on Toffoli, Evander Kane, and Brent Burns? How do you feel about them for the rest of the season? So Toffoli and Kane are already on the list, submitted by the good people of the Apples and Genos Discord server. But I will touch on Brent Burns here. Burns was a player that I was definitely touting as a buy low a little bit earlier on, you may remember. And he's been hot the last little bit. I think he's kind of cemented himself a little bit more on the top power play as of late. I don't know why they entertained Tony DeAngelo this year, but they did for a while. But it seems like Brent Burns has locked that down. The power play has been lights out the last little while, and Burns has been a big part of that. So he's got, 2 goals, 7 points in his last 5. He's getting 22 minutes a night, 24th in shots per 60, 16th in shot attempts per 60, 47th in individual scoring chances 4 per 60. On ice numbers, pretty solid. 48th in Corsi 4 per 60, 52nd in scoring chances 4 per 60 over the last little bit. Obviously, I don't think he's going to score 7 points for every 5 games for the rest of the season, but as of this point, he's on a 16-goal, 47-point pace, and that's with a 36% IPP. That should go up, quite honestly. The 12.8% on-ice shooting percentage might be a touch high, as might be the 8.4% shooting percentage, so you might have some balancing effects there, but honestly, I think the points... the point pace here at 47 points over an 82-game span that he's currently on, I think that's going to go up. I think you're going to see him in a 55 to 60-point range rest of season as long as he hangs on to that top power play spot. Antonio, here's a little interesting trade scenario. 12-team points league. I'm offering DeBrincat, Morrissey, and Trent Frederick for Matt Zuccarello, Kaprizov, and Marner. I have Dahlin Makar, so I can spare a D-man. Yeah, I would definitely take Zuccarello, Kaprizov, Marner. Honestly, DeBrincat, Morrissey, Frederick is kind of just a throw-in. DeBrincat and Morrissey for Kaprizov, or DeBrincat, Morrissey for Marner. I would absolutely do either of those. So if you can get all of that for DeBrincat and Morrissey, I would be super happy about that. M. Johnson says, what to do with Kyrou? Let's check in on Jordan Kyrou. He's got just 2 assists in his last 5, skating over 20.5 minutes a night, though, so those numbers are good. Has stopped shooting a little bit in this last little stretch, 144th in shots per 60, 205th in individual scoring chances for per 60. That part's not great. On the season now, 19 goal, 58 point pace. On the season, his individual numbers are really strong still. 69% IPP, which is nice. 7% shooting percentage. Kyrou usually can shoot at a much higher clip than that. 9.1% on ice shooting percentage. I think he's got more to give, to be quite honest with you. He's not playing particularly well at the moment, but I kind of feel like we know what this player is and what he's capable of, unless this recent stretch is an indication that he's, dealing with an underlying injury, which I don't know how you'd really know that. Then I'm not too concerned about Kyrou overall. I do think that he should get back to a point where, I think 30 goal, 70 point pace for Jordan Kyrou is what we should be expecting, especially if he's going to skate over 20 minutes a night as he has been the last 5 games. Toronto Dave's in the chat, #0G. Appreciate you, TD. Wick says, Nate being a champ as usual. Cheers. Cheers to you, sir. TD says the people love Nate. Well, can't just be all about pumping my tires here. We got to get into these puzzling players. So first off was Gabriel Valeri. Blake and I dug into Gabriel Valeri a little bit. He had a really nice game yesterday, actually, and it bumped up some of his ranks in this last 5 game sample that we like to look at so much, just to get a picture of where they've been performing recently. So 17th in individual scoring chances for per 60 over the last 5 games. The minutes have gone down. He's under 17 minutes average time on ice the last 5 games. That's kind of the potential effect of playing 4-rig bonus, I guess, right? But I'm not super concerned about Valeri. I mentioned yesterday, like the point pace he's on right now, 31 goal, 66 point pace for the season. That feels somewhat in there, but he is a hard player to read because we've never had really good sample sizes with Valeri. Even this season, we don't have a large sample size with Valeri. And so I'm not like comfortable with a rest of season projection on Valeri, I will say. But I still think he's performing pretty well. So I'm definitely not dropping him or anything like that just yet. And then Tim Stützle, another player we talked about yesterday, but there is actually an interesting update today. There were some changes to the power play units in practice today. Stützle was taken off the top power play unit and replaced by Claude Giroux, which is definitely an interesting development. Everybody else is still the same, so it does still feel like, it's not just that they're like splitting the units or trying to do a 1A, 1B thing. It's really just that they, took Stützle right off and replaced him with Giroux. Everybody else is still there. Norris, Tkachuk, Batherson, Shabbat, all still there. It's just that Stützle was taken off. And he hasn't been performing well lately. There's no 2 ways about that. But in the end, I do think it's kind of just growing pains with a new coach. I'm not like super concerned about Stützle. I mean, what are you really going to do at this point? Are you going to sell him low to somebody in your league? I don't think that's the right move. Interestingly enough, in a league that I'm in with the Fantasy Puck guys, actually, they started this league for a bunch of content creators. One of their guys, I think it was Chris, traded Stützle for Kyle Connor, who's obviously on injured reserve, probably coming back. Actually, I haven't checked if there's any recent news on Kyle Connor, but probably coming back in the not so distant future, but traded away Stützle for Kyle Connor, which I think is an interesting move. If you are higher up in your standings and you can get that done where you can go get Kyle Connor, maybe somebody's lower in the standings and they really need points now from a guy like Stützle and they're just praying he turns it around immediately, then maybe that's a trade you could explore. But, just on the basis of him being cold right now, I'm not really looking to trade a cold player at less than the value that I think he's worth. I still think Stützle is a point per game plus player, and he should get back to a 30 plus goal pace. I think Ottawa will figure this out, this new system that Jacques Martin is trying to bring in, a new level of, I guess, accountability and defensive responsibility that they're trying to bring in there, which was frankly sorely lacking under DJ Smith. It's just growing pains in my opinion. So Let's get into the rest of these that we haven't talked about yet. Valeri Nichushkin, this was an interesting topic, obviously, with Lehkonen, the news that I relayed earlier about him potentially coming back soon. Nichushkin's been on fire, basically, ever since Lehkonen went out of the lineup. Nichushkin getting tons of minutes. You can see averaging over the last 5 games, 21 and a half minutes in this stretch, 4 goals, 3 assists, 7 points in his last 5 games. On ice numbers, terrific, as you'd expect, playing with McKinnon and Rantanen for most of that time. 20th in Corsi 4 per 60, 31st in scoring chances 4 per 60. And his individual numbers pretty solid too. 41st in shots per 60, 43rd in individual scoring chances 4 per 60. On the season, he's pacing for 43 goals, 86 points, and that's with a 57% IPP, which you might expect could actually be a little bit higher. The 13.9% on ice shooting percentage, I think, probably comes back down at some point, unfortunately. So keep all that in mind, but in the end, like, what you're worried about here is that Lehkonen replaces him on the top power play, really. And that is a legitimate concern. Lehkonen has played over him on the top power play in the past. But I think like Nichushkin's just playing so well at the moment that I would be shocked if they just instantly flip to Lehkonen. If you are worried about that being a potential, eventuality where when Nichushkin runs into a little bit of a colder stretch, do they flip him for Lehkonen on the top power play? If that's your concern, then what I would say is wait till Lehkonen's back in. I would expect Nichushkin to stay on the top power play with Lehkonen back in the lineup, and then make the move then. Once everybody gets to see Lehkonen's back, Nichushkin's still playing 21 minutes a night on the top power play, that's when you make the move. You don't make the move now when everybody's kind of trying to buy him a little bit low, if they are buying him at all. So that's what I'd say about that, but I'm overall just not that concerned. Nichushkin's playing really well, and we have this history that he's played really well there as well. So I'm overall not that concerned. Maybe he doesn't hit this 86 points on the season, but 70 plus I think is well within the realm of possibility for Nichushkin on the season. Buchnevich was also requested, just 1 assist in his last 5 games here, kind of going along obviously with Kyrou, who we talked about earlier. 22 minutes on average, so he's still getting tons of minutes. You can see the shots per 60 at 80th is solid but not exciting, but the shot attempts and the individual scoring chances 4 per 60, 22nd and 30th respectively, those are really good numbers. I like to see that. On ice numbers, not so exciting. 106th in Corsi 4 per 60, 70th in scoring chances 4 per 60. Those are fairly middling numbers for sure. On the season now, 27 goal pace, 66 point pace. And overall, this kind of feels like what we might expect from Buchnevich. Maybe he gets a tiny boost and he gets back up to a 70-point pace, but yeah, I think this is just a cold stretch. The underlying numbers are solid for Buchnevich. I'm not concerned about him in the long run, and I do expect him to be a 70-ish point player the rest of the way. All right, let's get back into a couple of comments here. Jackson, in a keepers league with goals, assists, power play points, and power play points, shots on goal, hits, and blocks, would you rather keep Reinhart or Forsberg? It's a pretty interesting one. Forsberg elevating his play, as has Reinhart this season. Obviously, Forsberg accounts for a bit more in the hits category than a guy like Reinhart does, but Reinhart crushing on the power play. Forsberg does well for himself there too. Yeah, overall, I think I would take Forsberg just for the category coverage. But yeah, it's hard not to love what Reinhardt's been able to do this season. I think if you're talking about season-to-season consistency and what they mean to the team, like Reinhardt's a guy, as long as he's on this hot streak, he's going to keep this kind of top-end deployment, but he has gone down to the third line in Florida as recently as last year when he hasn't been performing quite as well, when they've tried to spread out their scoring a little bit. So, yeah, Forsberg is just it, basically. It's Yossi and Forsberg and everybody else in Nashville, and so that gives me a little bit of confidence. And then, yeah, the extra category coverage that Forsberg hits a bit more has me leaning Forsberg. I don't think you can go wrong with either of those guys, though. I think they're, very clearly in a tier together. Sony asks, what do you think about the Drysdale trade? I already talked about that one, actually, right off the top. Basically, I think that Drysdale is going to get top power play in Philly, and I think that he's probably the only Philly defenseman worth rostering. I think that Anaheim is probably expecting that Minchikov can be the guy for the immediate future, and then they'll figure out what they have with Zellweger probably next season. Maybe the end of this season, Zellweger gets called up as well. GG in the chat. Big ups, my man Nate the Great. Quick Q. Would you take Uyghur or Gudis in a bangers cats with pims, blocks, hits, and shots? I'm shocked at Weeks being as good as he has been. Yeah, that's fair. Uyghur has definitely had a much better season than he's had in years past, especially last year, I guess, basically the first year with Calgary. Last year where nothing went right for anybody. Uyghur has been getting more power play time this year, which has definitely contributed to some of that. But he's definitely also just playing better. See, over the last 5 games, 4 points here. And 10th in individual scoring chances for per 60 amongst all defensemen, 22 minutes a night. On ice numbers are really good as well. Uyghur's definitely been playing well. And yeah, on the season, 18 goal, 49 point pace. Numbers are good. Shots per 60 is 18th amongst all defensemen while skating 22 minutes a night. That's good. The IPP is maybe a little high, but overall, yeah, I don't think he's going to score 18 goals on the season. That shooting percentage is a bit high for him as well. But overall, yeah, I think he's going to be 40, 45 point player, probably when all is said and done. And yeah, he's going to provide you with a lot of bangs with Pims as well. Yeah, I still think it's weaker. I do think this is fairly sustainable. I think Hannafin is probably going to get traded maybe at the deadline, but I think he's on his way out and Uyghur's there for the long haul. And so I do think that Uyghur is going to be the guy they lean on rest of season, the guy that they're going to play in most situations. They're going to keep him on the power play. It's been a while now that actually Uyghur's been on the power play. I don't expect that to change anytime soon. So, yeah, I think I'd take Uyghur there. Sony says, sorry for touching on the Drysdale trade. No problem there. Jackson says, who's your top favorite bangers pick, hits, blocks for this week to stream? Probably Yanni Hakanpää from Dallas. Dallas has the 3 off nights to start the week. I guess, yeah, when did the Dallas game has already started? Yeah, so you're not getting him in for tonight, but with the off nights this week, Hakanpää was a guy that I was interested in. Another guy was Nick Seeler off of the Flyers. Big hits and blocks guy as well, but Hakanpää kind of clears everybody for this week, in my opinion. All right, let's get back over to it. Another guy who does some hitting from time to time, is a little bit known for that sort of thing, is Evander Kane. He has not done much of the scoring lately, though. Just 1 goal in his last 4 games, as you can see here on the screen. 24th in shots per 60, though, still. I think what people are most concerned about is the fact that he's gotten kind of demoted, I guess you could say, down the lineup. He's playing with Derek Ryan and Matthias Janmark, while Warren Fogle and Ryan McLeod play with Leon Draisaitl. And obviously the Oilers are winning, and so they don't have a lot of incentive to promote Kane further up the lineup. Overall, like, I'm just not concerned about Kane in the long term. These lines are going to change once, the Oilers hit another slightly rough stretch. They'll change things around again, and Kane should be back. You can see, like, the shot numbers are still there. He's doing what he normally does. It's just he's getting some bad deployment at the moment. I don't think that's going to last. So overall, not really concerned about Kane in the long term. It does suck. There's no two ways about it for the immediate future, and maybe you want to play some players over him if you've got some sit-start decisions involving Evander Kane. But in terms of rest of season, I'm not concerned. Jonathan Huberdeau is another player that we got to talk about. We've been talking about him as an obvious drop, and now all of a sudden you look up and he's got a couple goals, 5 points in his last 5 games, skating over 17 minutes a night. That's not terrible, I guess. 264th still in shots per 60, 267th in individual scoring chances for per 60, 100th in Corsi for per 60, 136th in on-ice scoring chances for per 60. Obviously, that's not ideal, but he is back playing with Elias Lindholm and Yegor Sharangovich, who's another player that was requested here. And that's kind of as good as it gets, really, at the moment, I guess, over there. Not really playing on the top power play unit, although they have kind of split the units a little bit more as of late there in Calgary. On the season, 12 goal, 41 point pace. Yeah, the numbers are pretty putrid still on the season for Huberdeau. I'm not excited about Huberdeau. Like, it's just really hard to be. Underlying numbers are not good. I think this is probably just some positive regression after he was playing poorly, plus having bad luck metrics. So I think this is just some natural positive regression for Huberdeau, and I'm just not excited. I've looked at him on the waiver wire in multiple leagues and just passed straight over him for others. Like, I would pick up Igor Sharangovich, we can talk about here, who has 3 points in his last 5 games, but skating 20 minutes a night, 68th in shots per 60, 18th in individual scoring chances for per 60. This is easily the best stretch of Igor Sharangovich's career to date, and he's getting a real chance to prove himself there in Calgary at the moment. And overall, I'm just way more interested in Sharangovich than I am in Huberdeau at the moment. More ice time, better underlying numbers. Everything's pointing towards Sharangovich for me if you're choosing kind of between the two. So that's my take on the Huberdeau Sharangovich dynamic that's currently going on there. And we'll keep rolling. Tom Wilson. Yeah, interesting one. We talked about Tom Wilson, I think, last week. Blake and I, 1 goal in his last 5 games, 18 minutes average time on ice. Still playing on the top line in the last game, I believe. Actually, I believe they changed that up mid-game, if I'm remembering correctly. There was some talk about that because Pacioretty ended up on that line for a bit with Dylan Strome. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see. I guess I could check game day tweets and see if we've got any updates from practice or anything. It doesn't look like we got anything there. So until further notice, yeah, it's a little bit trying to figure out where Tom Wilson fits into this. If he's staying on the top power play, which I kind of feel like he's going to. I feel like if anyone comes off the top power play that they iced the last game, it's Evgeny Kuznetsov, and they put Max Pacioretty in. Tom Wilson as the net front guy, I don't think is really going to change there. So I think his top power play role is secure, but the top line alongside Ovechkin is probably a little bit more up in the air. The underlying numbers have been really bad for Wilson the last little bit, and that's the most concerning part here. I think in like points or points only leagues, definitely you don't need to be hanging on to Tom Wilson, but in bangers leagues, he hasn't even been doing that as much as he has in the past, which is probably why most managers are a little bit less excited about Tom Wilson these days. Overall, I think I'm trying to hang on to him in like a Bangers Cats or something like that. I don't think I'm quite ready to, go that far to say I'm dropping Tom Wilson in a Bangers Cats league. But he is definitely starting to teeter on that edge where you're like, man, is it really worth my time to hang on to this guy? He's still got a couple of 4-shot games in his last 3 here. He's still putting up the hits numbers. Maybe not like insane hits numbers that you might expect in the last little bit here, but he's got a 4-hit game. He's got some 3-hit games, 2-hit games. He's still throwing hits out there for you. That's really solid stuff, honestly. So in Bangers Cats, I think I'm still hanging on to Tom Wilson, but definitely the lack of scoring is what's really hurting you here. If you look back even further than this sample that my sheet pulls here, he's only got 1 point, that 1 goal in his last 10 games, actually. And so that part is definitely pretty scary. So that's the kind of yin and yang that you're dealing with here. The hits are still there, so that's good for Bangers Cats. The shots have been really up and down, which is probably the hard part to deal with. 1 shot, 1 shot, 1 shot, 4 shots, 0 shots, 4 shots. That's the part that's hard to deal with currently with Tom Wilson. So he's on the edge for me. I'm trying to hang on, but I'm not going to fault you in a points league for dropping Tom Wilson at this point. Ricky Garcia in the chat, since we're talking Flames, any thoughts on Kadri? He's been a pleasant surprise this year. Yeah, Kadri is someone who always shows up well in the metrics that I like to look at. He's got 4 goals, 5 points in his last 5 here, 38th in shots per 60, 10th in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. On ice numbers are solid, 58th in Corsi, 4 per 60, 56th in scoring chances, 4 per 60. On the season now, pacing for 27 goals, 62 points. I haven't checked my projections, beginning of season projections for Kadri recently, but I'd wager, I guess, that's about where I had him. And yeah, the underlying numbers all looking fairly solid here. I'm not seeing anything too much. I think 27 goal, 62 point Kadri is maybe what we should expect rest of season. I wouldn't be too shocked if he continues to hit that. So I think he kind of is what he is, and I'm not expecting much more, but I'm definitely not expecting less at this point either. All right, Quinton Byfield, 3 assists in his last 5. Byfield is an interesting one. He has had some flashes here where he's shown some solid shot generation. Then the last 2 games, he's got 0 shot and 1 shot against Detroit and Washington. You figure he should be able to put up some shots against teams like that. Before that, he had a 4-shot game, a 3-shot game. That's not too bad. He's gone 6 straight now without a goal, but before that, he had 2 goals. So you're kind of getting a little bit of that hot and cold there with Quinton Byfield as well. Averaging 17 minutes a night. Honestly, that's about as good as it gets without shorthanded time there in LA. So that's about as good as you can expect for Byfield. 171st in shots per 60 over the last 5, 230th in individual scoring chances for per 60. It's the on ice numbers that have really always stood out with Byfield. 9th. Whew, that was a good vocal flub there. I'm still working my way back from being sick, but bear with me. 9th in Corsi 4 per 60 over the last 5 games. 55th in scoring chances 4 per 60. So that's the part that's obviously intriguing about Byfield. On the season now, a 23-goal, 64-point pace. The minutes have come up. The on-ice numbers have just been so solid, and that's the part that's really intriguing. I think, like, you look at the IPP at 65%, the shooting percentage 13.9%, on-ice shooting percentage 12.8%. Kind of feel like all of that is fairly sustainable. But I don't really know if we're going to get enough minutes out of Byfield to see any ceiling beyond this. And he's really got to shoot more for him to hit a really, either he's got to get more minutes, which we don't think is going to happen in LA because they like to spread things out so much. It would take probably, like 2 major injuries in their top 6, top 9 for them to start leaning on a top 6 more heavily and not just rolling the top 9 the way that they currently do. So unless that happens, you expect that this will stay relatively the same. I think Victor Arvidsson is on his way back in the not so distant future, so they're actually getting reinforcements in that regard. So you can't expect the deployment to change anytime soon. In a positive manner anyway. And then the shots is what you would have to lean on for him to really take the next step in terms of chance generation and starting to be even more efficient with the minutes that he is getting. So I think that 23 goals, 64-point pace. Maybe that's about what we should expect for Byfield. He does have a ceiling beyond that because he's clearly starting to really figure things out in this season. And I am excited about, a potential next step for Byfield, but maybe that doesn't come this season. Maybe, that doesn't come while he's a member of the LA Kings in this iteration of the Kings where they have all this talent in the top 9 that they're going to continue to cycle through. So, just some thoughts there. I'm tempering my expectations for Byfield, but I do think that the ceiling there is really exciting. And so I'm continuing to hold Byfield where I have him and just being a little bit patient. He's kind of on the edge of streamer territory in terms of what he's giving you in most points leagues here. But I think the ceiling is just so tantalizing with Byfield that I'm continuing to hang on, even though I would say that my the cerebral side of my being is telling me, my brain is telling me that you should probably just accept that Byfield is this 23-goal, 62-point guy who's probably somewhat replaceable in a lot of leagues. But my heart is telling me that Byfield's got an untapped ceiling that might break through and he might just be fantasy gold at some point this season yet. So the war between the head and the heart, you have it here on the Apples and Ginos podcast. Aman is in the chat, 14 teams, points league, Tuck. Is he a keeper? I believe is the question here. Depends how many keepers, obviously. I'm trying to think where I would probably draw that line. I think Tuck in a 14-team league is probably like a 4th round pick, maybe 4th, 5th round pick. If we're redrafting today, so maybe like a keep 5, I would say that Tuck is a keeper for sure. Keep 4, it's definitely a little bit more on that line. So that's my quick take without any further information on that one. Eunice Corpusalo. So let's talk about, obviously, the Senators. We talked about it with Stutzla there, trying to figure out a new coach's system here. And Corpusalo's not been good, obviously, on the season. 889 save percentage on the season. That show ain't no good, as my dear friend Blake would say. But I think the alternative here is Anton Forsberg, who also has an 889 save percentage. Forsberg did have a fairly nice game against Edmonton in a loss. He faced 46 shots and only gave up 3 goals, which I guess is a win, 935 save percentage. He got beat up against Vancouver the game before that, and then the game before that he had another 46 shots against him against Buffalo and ended up making 45 saves. So he had a terrific outing there. It's really kind of up and down and all over the map with Forsberg rather this season. And in the end, both these guys are kind of just leveling out to the same level of play. I don't have a strong take between Korpisalo and Forsberg rest of the season. I think they're going to most likely just alternate these guys and try to get one on a roll and then roll with that one. But until Ottawa as a team figures it out, I don't think you can really trust either of them. Maybe you're looking at them as a stream, like they do have a game against San Jose this week. So if you need a goalie streamer on Saturday, then you can go ahead and do it then. That's about as good as it gets that I could say for any of these Senator goalie options at the moment. Tyler Toffoli was requested 2 goals, 4 points in his last 5 games. That's actually pretty solid for Tyler Toffoli. I think there's been a perception that he hasn't been great. Definitely before this, he had gone through some large stretches where he'd put up a bunch of zeros. He had a 6-game pointless streak, then scored a goal and assist, another 3 games without a point, and then has had some decent games here in the last little bit, I guess we can say. Now, obviously, Jack Hughes is out. The Devils have just been completely beset by injury. Hamilton, Hughes missing big chunks of time now. Timo Meier on IR. Jonas Siegenthaler is one of their better defensive defensemen going out this past weekend as well. Tyler Toffoli, you would think that he would get more minutes in that game against Vancouver. He only skated 16-18. Maybe he gets more minutes moving forward, and we can lean into that a little bit. Underlying numbers are just okay. Tending towards not that great. 121st in shots per 60, 153rd in individual scoring chances for per 60. Hard to see that really improving without Hughes there, who's been a constant line mate there. On the season, 34 goal, 60 point pace. That's with a 46% IPP. Figure you can get into a little bit more than that. Shooting percentage at 14.6 feels all right. 12.9% on ice shooting percentage feels all right with Hughes in the lineup. Not so good with Hughes out of the lineup. Overall, I think that, 34 goals, 60 point Toffoli is probably what we should expect. Maybe it's hard to say. If he does get more minutes in the upcoming week while Hughes is out, and they just kind of lean on Toffoli and they lean on Nico Hischier and they lean on the guys that they do have still healthy even more, then maybe there's a little bit more of a ceiling just by virtue of volume for these guys, including Toffoli. But obviously, it's not really a net positive ever when Jack Hughes is out of the lineup for anyone there in New Jersey. So, I think 60 point Toffoli is what we should expect. 30 to 35 goals, 60 point Toffoli as a pace from here on out is what we should really expect. Michael Radzion in the chat. I'm butchering that name. I'm completely positive, and I do apologize. But yes, did Nate already talk about Elvis? I have not gotten there yet. He's coming up. Matt saying Party Town. Oof, I have Mr. J. Hughes. Yeah, that's feels bad at the moment for sure, but hopefully he's going to be back. It sounds like he's not going to have surgery, which is obviously the worst case scenario there. We will talk about Elvis Merzlikins here in a moment, but first we got to talk about Trevor Zegras. Had 2 goals last night, nearly cost me Mike a couple matchup, along with Mark Scheifele. Both those guys had a couple goals, and I thought I was sitting pretty, and I could get ahead of the week upcoming. Drop Cam Fowler, who's playing that night, and make an ad for the upcoming week. And nearly came back to burn me. I only won my matchup by 5 points. And definitely if Zegras had scored in overtime or something like that, it was trending towards that before Detroit scored in like the last minute of play there. So it was very close in the end, but good to see Trevor Zegras getting a couple goals, up to 3 points in his last five here, skating over 19 minutes a night. That's good numbers there. 147th in shots per 60, but only 319th in individual scoring chances for per 60. On ice numbers are not great. 135th in Corsi 4 per 60, 182nd in scoring chances 4 per 60. On the season, the numbers are going to look really bad. He was playing injured definitely earlier and then came out of the lineup. I think he's looking better since coming back, but the points haven't really been there, and his underlying numbers are just okay, not terrific, but he is getting good volume, and that's something that I think we can hang our hats on a little bit. Getting top line, top power play deployment. Troy Terry came back in the game yesterday, and that obviously provided a boost to Zegras. So I'm cautiously optimistic, I would say, on Zegras to get back to what we thought he could be, maybe from the rest of the season onwards. And I think that, yeah, for Zegras and Terry, to be quite honest, I think both of these guys, we could be looking at a situation where they both pace for maybe like a 70-point pace rest of the season. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility by any stretch. If they can just get some consistency, both actually play, be in the lineup consistently, get used to each other again. Yeah, I'm hopeful that that can be the case for both of those guys, and they can start to figure things out here in the back half, because I do think they're both very talented players, and they just need to have a chance to get some consistency together and figure it out over a period of games. All right. Elvis Merzlikins. Let's talk about it. So Merzlikins, basically, from what I understand, yeah, he has missed now 4 straight games. He, I guess, has been missing games due to illness. And then I don't really have a better update than that. I'm going to try to find one here live and try to figure out what exactly has been going on. Trying to find the latest tweet from anyone on Merzlikins. Maybe they're holding him out for a potential trade. Obviously, Columbus's season definitely not going very well at the beginning of the new year here. I think that might be what they're trying to do here. I'm gonna dig into this a little bit more. Maybe we'll move on and talk about a few other things, and I can dig into this even a little bit more. But yeah, I'm really not seeing anything, to be honest. So all I can say is maybe they're holding him out. Excuse me. Maybe they're holding him out as a potential trade chip, and maybe thought they were getting close on a trade somewhere, and that's why they were doing it. Maybe they thought that they're waiting to see what happened with Toronto with Martin Jones, and then Martin Jones went and had a great week last week, and now they can't trade him to Toronto. Who knows what goes on behind the scenes here? But if you have Merzlikins, yeah, I think you have to drop him for now, unless you have better inside information than I'm able to find just scrolling Twitter, basically, at this point. So yeah. Sorry for the diversion there, but yeah, I don't have a good read on the Merzlikins situation at the moment, but I would drop him for now until he gets back into the net. Maybe they're just really trying to see if Tarasov can develop some sort of consistency. He's played decently well in a couple of games, so yeah. Seeing what Tarasov can do, seeing what Spencer Martin can do, giving Merzlikins a break. He did play a really ton of games in the early going this year, so maybe that's what's going on. My guess would be that they're trying to find a trade partner for Elvis Merzlikins, and that's why they're holding him out. They don't want to risk injuring him and, losing one of their potential trade chips. Travis Sanheim, just 1 assist in his last 5 games, getting 22 minutes a night. The minutes have come down here. Earlier in the season, he was averaging like 26 plus. So that's really come down. Obviously, now they've traded for Jamie Drysdale, and that's just puts an absolute cap on Sanheim's power play potential. I really don't think he's going to see any power play time at all, probably the rest of season. And so I really don't think you're looking at Sanheim, like, honestly, like, he might just be like a 30, 35 point pace guy rest of season, and even that might be a tiny bit generous. It's crazy how fast he's fallen from where he was before. But yeah, his underlying numbers have really gone down as well. You'd expect him to go down a little bit, given that he's not getting power play deployment anymore. But definitely, I think he's just playing worse, definitely, than he has in the past as well. So not interested in Travis Sanheim. I think you can safely drop him in pretty much every league at this point. Matthew in the chat. Hello, thoughts on Mercer's value in the short term with Hughes out and the long term? He was a second half performer last year. Yeah, I'm interested in Dawson Mercer. The underlying numbers have not been great for Dawson Mercer this year, which is interesting because I thought that he could, potentially take a step this year. 3 goals in his last 5 here, 19 plus minutes. You'd expect that that's not going anywhere as long as Hughes is out. I think that Mercer is definitely a player that they like there, that they're going to use in a lot of situations. I just don't know if you can see how terrible the season-long numbers are there. 300th plus ranks across the board. Shots per 60, individual scoring chances 4 per 60, on-ice numbers as well. I don't know what I really realistically see as a ceiling for Dawson Mercer on the season. Maybe he's performing a little bit better, and so he gets to like a 50-point pace rest of the season. Maybe in this short stretch here without Hughes in the lineup, he skates like 20-plus minutes, and maybe he's into like a 55, 60-point pace while Hughes is out. Maybe he gets hot and he goes for a little bit better than that. Maybe he hits point per game for 3, 4, 5 games here. That's possible. I just... I'm not excited by Dawson Mercer, I guess is what I would say at this point. I think that he's got some value in the short term for sure, but I'm definitely not super excited about the long-term value for this year. All right, we're getting towards the end here. Johnny Gaudreau, 1 goal, 2 assists, 3 points in his last 5, 18.5 minutes average time on ice. The individual numbers are atrocious here from Johnny Gaudreau. 334th in shots per 60, 368th in individual scoring chances 4 per 60. On ice numbers not much better. And it's just really hard to see how Johnny Gaudreau is going to salvage this season if he's not doing it himself. The rest of the team, he's really got to pull them along with him. You see Kirill Marchenko here, a guy that I was really excited about. His numbers have fallen off. At least he's shooting a little bit more again recently, up to 101st in shots per 60 over his last 5, but he's only got 1 assist and down to 15 minutes average time on ice. Signs are not good in Columbus. I've said before, I don't think Pascal Vincent is a good coach. I don't think he knows how to get things out of his players, and I don't think he knows how to ice an NHL-ready system, especially defensively. Whenever I've watched the Columbus play, they're just constantly getting run around in their own zone. Nobody knows where they're supposed to be. It's a true train wreck in slow motion situation in their own zone. So that's just hard. It's hard to create offense when you're constantly behind in the defensive half of the ice. So I just think that it's a worst case scenario once again for Columbus, which is just really tough to see. Obviously, Line A can come back and that'll give them some boost. Jenner can come back. That'll give them some boost. But I'm really struggling to see what the real upside for Johnny Gaudreau is. If he's not shooting, he's pacing for 14 goals, 50 points on the season. And his shooting percentage should be higher. His IPP should be higher. So maybe he should be in like a 60 to 65 point range. But even that, if he's not even going to approach 25 goals as a pace for the rest of the season, how valuable is this player to you? So if you need to drop Johnny Gaudreau, I think you have my permission, my blessing to do so. Roope Hintz, 4 goals, no assists in his last 5 here, averaging over 18 minutes a night. Individual numbers not so hot, 157th in shots per 60, 191st in individual scoring chances 4 per 60, but the on-ice numbers, as you'd expect, pretty solid. 30th in Corsi, 4 per 60, 21st in scoring chances, 4 per 60. I guess I could check here. Yeah, he's got another goal tonight. So good stuff from Roope Hintz in the last little bit in terms of the goal scoring at the very least. On the season now, 34 goal, 75-point pace. And yeah, I think we're back with Baby Drive. I think that he's efficient in a lot of the ways that a guy like Leon Draisaitl is, and that's where I coined the nickname from. I think the IPP has room to grow, quite honestly. I think he can get past point per game and be point per game plus rest of season. The on-ice shooting percentage definitely high at 14.3% on the season, but the IPP should more than account for that potential regression in my mind. So I do think that Roope Hintz is a guy that we should expect to be point per game and potentially even point per game plus rest of season. Andrei Kuzmenko. This is a tough one, obviously. Bench Kuzi. I did pick up Kuzmenko in one spot, and he has done absolutely nothing for me tonight, despite the Canucks putting up 5 goals as of the time of this recording through 2 periods. So that's a little bit disappointing. He does have 2 goals in his last 4 before tonight, and the underlying numbers pretty solid despite the 14 and a half minutes average time on ice. 57th in shots per 60, 27th in individual scoring chances 4 per 60, 4th in Corsi 4 per 60. That's a nice number. So yeah, I think there's clearly just a disconnect between him and the coach there at this point. I would love to see a trade happen. Send him to Toronto. I'd love to see him go on one of our top 6 lines. I think that'd be a good fit for everybody involved. So send him our way. We'll put him out there, and he can score some goals alongside Matthews or alongside Nylander. But regardless, in the current situation that he's in, it's hard to trust him. I picked him up basically because of Vancouver's back-to-back tonight and tomorrow, Monday night here and Tuesday night. And just to see what I could get out of him, basically. It was a deeper league. It was a couple, so 14-team league, and not much out there available. So I thought that he was probably the best that I could do in that regard. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with Andrei Kuzmenko. Sorry, my sheet just totally crapped out on me here. But actually, Kuzmenko was the last guy because we already talked about Kirill Marchenko. Lastly here, I guess we'll close it out with a message from Nimmer. Hey, Nimmer, how's it going? Hey, Nate, hope all's well. Any chance PLD picks it up in the second half? Doing a great job as always. Thanks, buddy. I think that PLD is in a tough spot currently. I think that the Kings, as of late, they've been they haven't played their best hockey, and they have moved some things around. So PLD played with Kempe and Laferriere in their last game against the Capitals, and the results were not good. They got absolutely caved in. So I think that that's probably going to change again at some point. And I don't really know what to expect from Dubois. It seems like he's phoning it in a little bit this year. All of his underlying stats have not been good, and that's a little bit disconcerting for sure. I think my sheet is completely broken at this point, so I don't know if this is going to work. No, I'm getting nothing. But yeah, Dubois, I just think that where he's been this year is about where we can expect him to be, quite honestly. I'll look him up here on Natural Stat Trick just quickly, and we can kind of talk through the season that is and see where he's, trending towards with last season and this season. It might actually be Natural Stat Trick that's broken, and that might be why my sheet broke, because I am pulling some numbers from them for that sheet. That might be why I'm having some issues over there. Yeah, I think the Kings really got to figure out their lines here. They got to figure out if they are going to change things up. So right now, I'll just run through it briefly, but in the last game, they had Kopitar, Moore, Byfield as the quote-unquote top line. They had Dano, Fiala, Kaliev as one line, and then they had Dubois, Kempe, Laferriere, as I mentioned, as the other line. Maybe Arvidsson coming back provides another running mate for Dubois, but on the season, they're entrusting him with less than 16 minutes average time on ice. Which is kind of crazy given the amount of money they gave him this offseason. His shooting percentage is a touch low, but the shots per 60 is way down from the last couple seasons in Winnipeg, so that's definitely a concerning part. Individual scoring chances for down as well. On-ice numbers are pretty solid, but not really due to anything he's doing. It's more the line mates there. The on-ice shooting percentage should rebound, so you can expect some sort of positive regression in that regard from Dubois. But again, it's like a regression to what? He's got 16 points in 36 games on the season. What are we really expecting him to get up to? Like, if he gets back to like a 40 to 50 point pace somewhere in there, are you really happy with Pierre-Luc Dubois? I just don't think that the ceiling that people were hoping for with this player is there at all this season. And so unless it's like, you know, a 16 team league or something pretty deep, then I think you're just not interested in Dubois until further notice, until we see something kind of under the hood that really tells us that something has changed in either Dubois' mindset. You know, maybe he's playing hurt. That's always a possibility, but he has 0 shots, 2 shots, and 0 shots in his last 3 games. Like, what are we doing here? I'm not interested in Dubois at all at this point, and I don't foresee that changing anytime soon. All right. I did say that was the last one, but we got one more squeaking in. Under the wire, Scott asking Reinhart for Stamkos. That's a tough one, but I think I'm going to stick with Reinhart there. I don't know how much longer this hot streak will last for Reinhart, but I think that I'm just going to ride it out if the return is Stamkos, who's probably just a lateral move. Even if Reinhart regresses, it's just a lateral move. And if Reinhart manages to just, you know, keep up this bender, keep up these unsustainable percentages for the rest of the season, then you have the better player in Reinhart already. So I'm sticking with Reinhart there if that's who I got. All right, folks. This has been fun. But that is all that we've got for this episode. I will say, if you want to get your puzzling players in for next week, I put out a call in the Apple Studios Discord server, usually somewhere around noon on Mondays. So get in there and watch for that call and then get your player written in there. And hopefully we get to it here in the live show. So definitely go ahead and do that for next week. I'll be running these 8 p.m. EST live shows for the rest of the fantasy season. So hopefully this brought you some value, helped you get a little bit better at fantasy hockey today. All the advanced stats you heard today came from Natural Stat Trick, which is a terrific resource. Many thanks to the band They're There for supplying the music for this podcast. Be sure to check out their Spotify as well. And that's it, folks. Much love.